This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem. We have a very interesting topic this morning. I have to admit, we're going to be, next Shabbos, I'm going to be in Krakow for Shabbos. Matzai Shabbos is the yahrzeit of the Rama. BaOmer is the yahrzeit of the Rama. Today's breakfast is dedicated in honor of my dear friend Robert Yadgarav. They should have Shefa, Bracha, V'Hatzlacha. The Rama was the pillar of Psak for Ashkenazic Jewry. We have something called the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch was written by Rabbi Yosef Karo. The Rama also wanted to write a codex of halachos for the Ashkenazim. And at the same time that the Rama was working on his work, the Mechaber, Maran Bet Yosef, the Rabbi Yosef Karo, wrote the Shulchan Aruch. So the Rama, in his humility, wrote footnotes on the Shulchan Aruch. And wherever the Mechaber says something and the Rama has a difference of opinion, he says the word Haga. Haga means footnote. The Rama called his commentary the Mappa, the tablecloth, because the Shulchan Aruch was a set table and the Rama was covering the table. The Rama was an amazing personality. The Rama's opinion was that philosophy and Kabbalah were almost the same. The Rama's opinion was philosophy and Kabbalah was almost the same. He had two older cousins who were Gedolei Hadar. One was the Maharam Katzen Ellenbogen, and the other, the Maharam Padwa, who was basically, I believe, his first cousin, once removed, as well as he was a cousin of a brother-in-law of the She'iras Yosef. And he was also a cousin, once removed, of the Marshal. So the Rama was very related to many of the Gedolim of the time. So he's the first cousin of Maram Padwa. He's the first cousin of the Marshal. He's the brother-in-law of Rabbi Yosef Katz. And he was a big proponent of studying philosophy, following in the ways of the Rambam. In fact, the opening comment of the Rama in Shulchan Aruch. Does anybody know what's the opening comment of the Rama in Shulchan Aruch? Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. Where does that come from? Where does Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid? It's a pasuk in Tehillim. But the Rama talks about how the way a person acts when they're in the presence of a great king is very different than when in their confines of their own, the privacy of their own home. The Rambam is quoting word for word the Rambam in the Mar Nevuchim. The Rama was a very big proponent of the Rambam in the Mar Nevuchim. The Marshal challenged the Rama. The Marshal had issues with the Rama because the Rama, in a letter to the Marshal, quoted Aristotle. And the Rama said that he never learned Aristotle independently. Whenever he quotes Aristotle, it's always when the Rambam already quoted him in the Mar Nevuchim or elsewhere. So what I want to bring to your attention today is a work that was written by the Rama that many are not aware of. The name of this sefer is Toras Chatas. You ever hear of the sefer? Toras Chatas. So aside from the fact that the Rama wrote on the Tur Darkei Moshe, he wrote on the Mechaber, the Hagais, he was the Baal HaMappa. He also wrote a sefer, Toras Chatas. The Toras Chatas was basically a codex of dietary laws. Dietary laws meaning halachos of machalim asurim and machalim heterim. It was based on and modeled after the sefer Sharei Dura. You ever hear of the Sharei Dura? Sharei Dura was written by Rabbi Yitzchak of Duren. Rabbi Yitzchak of Duren, and the Rama wrote a codex of hilchos treifos and hilchos machalis asurim and heterim in the model of the Sharei Dura, and this was a very controversial work. And the Rama had a friend in the yeshiva. Which yeshiva did the Rama learn in? The Rama learned in the yeshiva of Reb Shalom Shachna. You ever hear of Reb Shalom Shachna? Reb Shalom Shachna was one of the greatest all-time Gedolei Yisrael who lived in Poland. You have to understand, there's an idea that as Spanish Jewry was coming to an end in the end of the 15th century, in 1492, the epicenter of world scholarship moved to Poland. So in 1492, with the Spanish Inquisition, it was the decline of Spanish Jewry, was the ascent of Polish Jewry. And the greatest gadol of the time, his name was Rabbi Yaakov Pollack. He was the Gadol Hadar. If you never heard of Rabbi Yaakov Pollack, you need to learn about him. He was the acclaimed Gadol Hadar. The reason perhaps you never heard about him is because he didn't write any Svarim. And he, Beshita, in principle, did not write Svarim. He innovated a system of learning called pilpul. Now, pilpul is not what we're familiar with in yeshiva. There's something called pilpul. Pilpul is you have a toisus and you have a Rabbi Kiva Eger and you have an answer of the Chassam Sofer. We call that pilpul. That's not what pilpul was. Pilpul was basically intellectual acrobatics. What does it mean, intellectual acrobatics? So they would try to connect two Gemaras, let's say, that were not connected. There's no connection between them. They would, let's say, take, this is maybe an over-exaggeration of what they would do, but they would take Daf Chaf and try to connect it to Daf Chaf Beis. Take out Chaf Aleph. In other words, it was merely to sharpen the minds of the Talmidim. It did not have any halacha l'maisa value. It was a manner of sharpening the minds of the Talmidim to produce scholars, not just of knowing information, not just what we call, chamar noisei svarim. There's a concept, chamar noisei svarim. What's a chamar? Or they call it, the Nevardika Rebbitzin. What's the Nevardika Rebbitzin? If anyone has a shaila, you could ask the Nevardika Rebbitzin. Why? Because she heard the Nevardika Rav being asked that shaila so many times, she knows the answer. She doesn't understand why it's the answer, but she knows the answer. So there's an idea that when it comes to learning, it's not enough just to know information. You have to have a very sharp and profound understanding of the material. So in order to sharpen the minds of the Talmidim, Rabbi Yaakov Pollack developed a system called pilpul. And he gave it over to his primary disciple, Rav Shalom Shachna. You ever hear of Rav Shalom Shachna? Rav Shalom Shachna was the Rosh Yeshiva where the Rama learned, and ultimately the Rama was excelled so greatly in the Yeshiva of Rav Shalom Shachna that Rav Shalom Shachna gave the Rama his daughter. Rama married, I believe her name was Golda. He married the daughter of Rav Shalom Shachna. By the way, his first wife did not have Arichas Yamim. And Golda, the daughter of Shalom Shachna, passed away on the 11th day of Sivan in the year 1551. By the way, the Rama lived a very short life. Okay, let's focus on the Rama's Sefer Teiras Chata. So, unlike his Rabbeim, by the way, the Maharal of Prague was very against pilpul. He did not agree with the system of learning called pilpul. The Rama, though, was the leading disciple of the yeshiva of pilpul of Rav Shalom Shachna. Rav Shalom Shachna, if I'm not mistaken, is buried in Lublin, and buried next to him, near him, is the Chayz of Lublin. From just two different eras and two different worlds. Okay. The Rama wrote a work called Teiras Chatas. The Rama was a great innovator in the world of Psak. And there's now, the Rama was not happy with the Beis Yosef. Number one, the Rama said, Beis Yosef, it's very nice, you take you take three views. The Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh. That was the modus operandi of Maram Bet Yosefus. He took the three pillars of halacha, the Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh, and he took 2 out of 3. So the Rama says, of course, 2 out of 3. Shkayach, 2 of them were Sfardim. So it's very nice you put in the Rosh. You paid homage to the Rosh. But at the end of the day, the Rambam and the Rif are usually identical. The Rambam writes he only disagreed with the Rif on, about a dozen times. So this is always going to be the psak of the Sfardim. So the Rama's, one of his main critiques on the Beis Yosef is, what about the Balei HaTosfos? What about the Balei HaTosfos? Why don't you take into account the psak of the Balei HaTosfos? We've mentioned many times, who is the greatest of all the Rishonim? It depends who you ask. Depends if you're Ashkenazi or Sfardi. The Sfardim say, the Ritva says, Mi Moshe ad Moshe lekam k'Moshe, that the Rambam was the greatest of all the Rishonim. But the Ashkenazim disagree. The opinion of the Ashkenazim is, Rabbeinu Tam was gadol b'chacham of a minyan mikol rishonim. Rabbeinu Tam, and after Rabbeinu Tam, Ashkenazim maintain the Ri Hazaken, who was the nephew of Rabbeinu Tam. So the one critique of the Rama is Beis Yosef. Why don't you take into account the opinion of the Balei HaTosfos? Number two, the Beis Yosef would say, mutter aser. You allowed to do it, you're not allowed to do it. What about if you're really allowed to do it and the minhag is not to do it? Or what if you're not allowed to do it and the minhag is you're allowed? It doesn't matter what the minhag is. The Rama was the one who gave halachic power to the concept of minhag. Now, minhag is the most misunderstood term in Judaism. People think, oh, my father does A, I have to do A. You are not bound by what your father did in most cases. Minhag is not what your father did. Minhag is what was done in the city where your ancestors came from. That's minhag. Let's say your father says Tehillim after davening. Let's say your father learns Mishnayos. Does that bind you? Not at all. Not in the slightest. It's a nice thing to do. It's a good thing to do. You should do it because it's a good thing to do. You're not bound by that. Something that a parent does because they want to do it or they want to be machmir does not bind you in any sense. Minhag is dependent on the way things were practiced in the community where your ancestors come from. That's one of the basic misunderstandings of minhag. But when something was practiced in the community where your parents come from, the Rama gave a lot of credibility to that in halacha. This was a concept that the Rama advocated really more than anybody else. Another thing the Rama came up with. Hefsid Meruba. Hefsid Meruba. In other words, really something is aser. The chicken is treif, according to most opinions, but it's going to cause a big loss. The Rama was the one who, so to speak, innovated, you could be lenient. Now, and here's where there's like a slippery slope. I'm an Oisher Muflag. The guy down the block, he's an Ani Ve'evyoin. So you're telling me that for me, the chicken is treif, and for that guy, who it would be a big loss, for him it would be kosher? Yeah? So now what? Halacha is subjective? Absolutely. That was the opinion of the Rama. Halacha is subjective. You do not find these ideas in the Shulchan Aruch. You will not find in the Mechaber Hefsid Meruba. You will not find the Mechaber Loi Nohagu. So these were all chidushim of the Rama. Furthermore, okay, you want to see how times have changed? You know, we're so used to, I don't know what the halacha is, I'll go ask a posek. Think about what it means to go ask a posek. Asking a posek means that I myself, I am so unlearned and so unknowledgeable that I don't even know heads or tails about this issue. I'm going to call someone else, and whatever he tells me, I'm just going to follow. Now, I presume that he must have learned the sugya and know everything that the Rishonim Acharim have to say about that. So basically, I'm suspending my own mind, and I'm basically relying on this gentleman, who I hope he has a better clue than I do. Are you allowed to do that? How do you know he's done his due diligence? The Rama, by writing a codex, think about what a codex says. Mutter, aser, who's the Rama? How do I know he came to the right conclusion? Maybe it is a job of every Jew to analyze each subject from its source in the Gemara, learn the Rishonim, and then come out with... Now, and each person knows their own particular situation, because what their financial situation is, what the need is. It was the opinion of many Gedolim that you cannot write a book, a short, like a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. You cannot write halachas. Yes, no, maybe, this. So when the Rama came out with his notes on Shulchan Aruch, the Rama had a very close friend from the yeshiva, Reb Chaim, the older brother of the Maharal of Prague. He wrote a few svarim. He wrote a sefer called Igeres Hatiyol. We quoted it a few weeks ago in our shir about being Mitzapel Yeshua. He wrote a sefer called Sefer HaChaim, and he wrote a sefer called Vikuach Mayim Chaim. And Vikuach Mayim Chaim, he established 13 principles to challenge the Rama and why you cannot rely on the Rama. Can you imagine? Here, today, we're now 500 years later. No Ashkenazi would move not right or not left from anything the Rama says. And 500 years ago, this was considered controversial, and a great Gadol wrote a work that you cannot rely on the Rama. So one thing we see is anytime anything good ever came in Judaism, it was never accepted unanimously. It was never accepted. Of course it was never accepted. You know, we look back, we like to have like revisionists say, the Shulchan Aruch, the Rama. Of course, it's true. You can't move. If you move one iota from a word in the Shulchan Aruch, then you're like abdicating your connection to the Jewish people. But historically, all good things were challenged.
Among his critiques of the Beis they interacted, or
did the Rama ever interact with the Beis Yosef? I was actually going to speak about this by between Mincha and Marav last night, and it says it on the schedule. But I wasn't in the mood of talking about that. I said over other stuff. But the Rama and the Mechaber did interact. In the Tshuvas of the Rama, Siman Mem Ches, the Beis Yosef issued a psak about Yarshim, and the Rama, who was younger than the Beis Yosef, wrote a tshuva, with the utmost reverence and deference to the Mechaber, and that Batla Daiti, and that he's nothing compared to the Mechaber, but he argued on him. He disagreed with him. That was one instance where they interacted. Another time where they interacted, it seems that the Rama was a very great sofer. And in order to write a Sefer Torah, you need something called a tikkun. Okay? Now, not what Balei Kriya call tikkun. You know, Bal Koire, he practices a laning in a tikkun. A tikkun is the manual of where a parsha should end, what kavana you should have when you write Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud. Sometimes it's Kodesh, sometimes it's Chayil. If it's Kodesh, you have to be mechavin to write it b'kedusha. If it's Chayil, you don't have to have that kavana. By the way, there was a controversy now where the tikkunim that Sofrim have been using for the last 5 years, there was a misprint. Basically, the computer that typeset it seems like there was a corruption, and there was a controversy that brewed about a month ago. I'm not sure where it's holding right now, but whether the Sifrei Torah that were written in the last 5 years, whether they're kosher or not. Whether all the Sifrei Torah written in the last 5 years, there's a question. That's called a tikkun. A tikkun is the manual of how to write a Sefer Torah. The Beis Yosef had a tikkun. The Rama sent a letter to the Beis Yosef to get a hold of the tikkun, and the Rama wrote a special Sefer Torah, and it's reported that it had 24 variances from other Sefer Torah in Eastern Europe. The Sefer Torah existed in the Rama Shul until World War II, and they would read it upon special occasions. Look, in Borough Park today, they have the Sefer Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, and the Skolya Rebbe, I think he takes that a couple times a year, on Chanukah, maybe other occasions. So in the Rama Shul, they had the Sefer Torah of the Rama. Now, I want to share with you some of the critiques on the Rama. Now, another critique of the Rama, the Rama's critique on another critique the Rama had on the Beis Yosef is that the Beis Yosef paskin halacha, but he did not take into account minhag Ashkenaz. So Rabbeinu Chaim, the older brother Maharal of Prague, said to the Rama, the same problem you have with the Beis Yosef that he didn't take into account minhag Ashkenaz, I have on you, because Rama, you're only taking into account minhag Poland, but you're not taking into account minhag Ashkenaz. And there's a difference between the minhag in Poland and the minhag in Germany. Now, what's very interesting, and I don't know the answer to this, is look, my minhag, I daven nusach Ashkenaz. Many people daven nusach Sfard. I cannot understand why, when it comes to slichos, Ashkenaz, those who daven nusach Ashkenaz, they daven nusach Lita, and then those who daven nusach Sfard, they say nusach Poland. First of all, I'm not Lithuanian. My minhag is Ashkenaz, not Nusach Lita. I don't have Lithuanian blood in me. I don't have 1 ounce of I don't have not 1 iota of Lithuanian blood. So why am I saying Nusach Lita? I should say Nusach Poland. Furthermore, why in the world are people daven Nusach Sfard who they're Ungarische mamish through and through? Their great-grandfather had a chandelier in Hungary and ate gala. They don't have an ounce of Polish blood. Why in the world are they davening Slichos Nusach Poland? So they'll say, I'd rather be Polish than a Lithuanian. I don't know, but why is there no Nusach Ungarish? I don't understand why, when it comes to Slichos, the 2 Nuschais, it has nothing to do with Ashkenaz Sfard.
It's closer to Hungary than it is to Lithuania.
Poland is closer to Hungary? Like, why are the 2 Nuschais by Slichos? I don't get that. Anyway, and for me, so that's why if I'm davening in a Nusach Sfard minyan, it doesn't bother me so much to say the Nusach Poland, because I'm from Poland. Anyway, do you have the sheet? This is okay. Now here's very interesting. This critique on the Rama's Taras Chatas was written 3 years. I'm going to tell you. This sefer is called Vikuach Mayim Chaim. It was published in the year 1575, 3 years after the Rama passed away, which is interesting. It was not published, it was composed 3 years after the Rama passed away, but it was not published until over 130 years later in 1712. So apparently this Rabbi Chaim, a friend of the Rama, he was too good of a friend to actually write it in the Rama's lifetime. So he wrote it after he died, and he didn't publish it right away. He was a chavrusa of the Rama by the Marshal and Rav Shalom Shachna. The Hakdama of the Vikuach Mayim Chaim. Now let me explain to you what this is. The Rama wrote Taras Chatas. Taras Chatas is Piskei Halacha. Rabbi Chaim challenged him in many times on the psakim of the Rama, but he also wrote an introduction basically bringing up 13 fundamental challenges to the psakim of the Rama in Taras Chatas and in general. That was completely hidden. That was Nignaz Lagamri. And it was only published one time in Tuf Ayin Beis. Tuf Ayin Beis is 1712. And the Rabbeinu Chaim sets forth all of his issues with the methodology of the Rama. And what's amazing is, somebody wrote a work to answer the Rama against the challenges of Rabbeinu Chaim. His name was Rabbi Yosef Shaul Halevi Natanzan. You ever hear of Rabbi Yosef Shaul Halevi Natanzan? What was his sefer called? The Shayal Umeshev. Do you have the new book? We're going to make a commercial now for the new book, Lag BaOmer. Do you have this new book? We gave it out yesterday. Okay? In this book, in a footnote, I want to tell you, on page 33. No? That deserves no. I heard from Rav Asher Weiss that Rav Natan Zan's Tshuvos, the Shalom Eshiv, comprises the largest body of material in Torah Sheba'al Peh that any one person ever composed. Shaus Tshuvos Shalom Eshiv is the largest body of the Torah Sheba'al Peh that any person, it's bigger than the Gemara. It's bigger than the Gemara. Anyway, so he wrote a kuntras against the Mayim Chaim. Think about it. What was Rama's first name? Moshe. Moshe, he pulled us out of the water. So the Rabbeinu Chaim wrote Vikuach Mayim Chaim. So the Shalom Eshiv wrote a response called Toras Moshe. He writes, Yan ki min hamayim mishisuhu mi vikuach mayim chaim. I yanked the Rama out of the water from the challenges of Rabbeinu Chaim. Okay, so I want to read to you quickly some of the challenges of Rabbeinu Chaim, the brother of the Maharal of Prague. Number 1, Yivayar she'isra ha'macholiest hu davar meruchak u'metuv l'nefesh yosem mishar yisrael. One principle is that when it comes to food, the laws of Isser v'Heter food are more chamor than any other area of the Torah, and you cannot be quick to be lenient because you become what you eat. You become what you eat. Number 2, Mevi moifes. Shlo yerav la'adam hayra zulase. Now, do not follow this. This is very dangerous. This is just between me and you. Nobody else will hear it. Okay? The opinion of Rabbeinu Chaim is, you cannot rely on anyone else's psak. You should not want to, and you should not rely on a book like even the Shulchan Aruch. How can you rely on the Shulchan Aruch? You got to learn the topic yourself. Again, we're not on that level. We unfortunately, we have no choice but to be soymech on Paiskim and Gedolim. But again, back 500 years ago, there was a viewpoint that was considered a cop-out. It was considered a cop-out.
Speaking to Hamoinam?
Speaking to Hamoinam. Number 3, Toichacha Megula Neged Sefer Taras Chata Shemater Kama Dvarim Shu Timoin Gada B'Yinei Ha'olam. This is an open rebuke against the Rama who mattered many things. Number 4, he does not like any of these modern Sfarim. Yidaber min hasfarim sheneschar b'zmanenu zeh v'shem noitlu lehem atara la'atzman yosef v'nara lehem. They're taking too much credit for themselves. Number 5, all the new books, they just promote laziness. They just make you lazy. Why should I learn Chulin? I'll just open up, the Shulchan Aruch, do this, don't do that. What took the Gemara a blot and a half to, maybe it's this way, maybe it's that way, maybe you could say it like this, and the Gemara is mamish. If you would learn that Gemara, you would be straining your mind for weeks and weeks. Just tell me yes or no. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Shulchan Aruch says, the Mechaber says yes, the Rama says no, and over here maybe. So, I saved myself a few weeks. It just promotes laziness. Next, Shemachabre Hasram Shebizmanenu Zeh Kemat Yevshir Shal Yimotu Min HaMachshela. The authors today, I'm saying we're not talking about 2024, we're talking about 1550. It's Kemat impossible that they are not free of error. Number 7, he says not to rely only on the Sfarim Rishonim. But on the other hand, if you only learn the Sfarim of Achronim, you're like an Ani ve'Evyain. Okay, look at number 9. Here's one of the main tainas of the Sefer Chaim. Shedivrei Sefer Taras Chatas Einam Magiyim LeMinhag Ashkenaz. Ve'ein Levato Minhagim B'nei Minhag Medinas Poland. The laws of Taras Chatas do not reach and they do not encompass what was practiced in Germany, and we're not mevatel what was practiced in Germany for what was practiced in Poland.
Can I ask, how did they come to write the Shulchan Aruch? Because this is most basing, assuming.
By the way, I want to,
motivated that.
Did you know? How long would it take you? I want to just question to take you to learn the Shulchan Aruch from Siman Aleph to Siman Pei. Right? So it's almost Chelek Aleph of Mishnah Berurah. Okay. Did you know that the Shulchan Aruch, he wrote a lengthy exposition on the Torah, and then he summarized in the Shulchan Aruch that you should learn it, the Shulchan Aruch, once every 30 days. So on the first day of the month, you learn from Siman Aleph to Siman Pei. What in yeshiva it would take an entire year, the Shulchan Aruch expected every Hamoinam, every average person, to go from Siman Aleph to Siman Pei in one day. And that was considered just a quick review. So you see how the times have changed. That you learn the entire Daled Chelkei Shulchan Aruch in 30 days. It was like a yoimi. So, what would that be like? That would be less, that would be like learning Shas in like 6 months. And the original Shulchan Aruch, there was a calendar. Yom Aleph, Yom Beis, Yom Gimel, Yom Dalet. Okay, look in Yud Aleph. First of all, let's see Yud. Tluna al Rabbi Mechaber, he questions Rama. Shekavatz minhagim chadashim. Rama encompassed many new minhagim. And even vafilim nekabel dvar b'taras halacha. Even if we accept what the Rama says halachically, lo nekabel dvar b'taras minhag. We can't accept what he says as a minhag. Yud Aleph. Vikuach amar sheharav hanal mekel bekama mekoymos mishum hefsid meruba. He doesn't like that the Rama is mekel if there's a big loss. Oh, the Rama has another kula. Tzoyrach gadol, a big need. No, until the Rama, you go to the rabbi. Could I do this? It's either yes or no. Now the Rama creates the sliding scale. Very expensive, big loss, big need. Says the Rabbi Chaim, you can't paskan halacha that way. That's a slippery slope. Today it's a big need, tomorrow it's a small need, the next day it's no need at all. Another kula of the Rama. If you have two chumras, we don't slap on two chumras one on top of the other. Says Rabbi Chaim, where did he get that from? What effect did Rabbi Chaim's 13 arguments have on the acceptability of the Rama in halacha? None whatsoever. None whatsoever. So, it goes to show that almost every good thing had major challenges. Even the Shulchan Aruch himself, the Maharal, also challenged the Beis Yosef. But the bottom line is, it's kedai to be familiar with this Rabbi Chaim. This Rabbi Chaim ben Betzalel, the brother Maharal of Prague. He was a good friend of the Rama. He wrote this sefer to challenge Rama. Yosef Shaul Levi Natanzan defended the Rama. Now, I'll tell you something very interesting. The Rama, as we said, was very knowledgeable in many disciplines, including philosophy and astronomy. The Rama had a student, Rab David Gans. You ever hear of Rab David Gans? Rab David Gans wrote a sefer, Tzemach David. Tzemach David is a work of history that the Rama encouraged. Now, Rab David Gans was in Germany. Rab David Gans walked from Germany to Poland to learn from the Rama. Rav David Gans was an expert in astronomy, and he had correspondence with the great astronomers of the time called Johann Kepler and Tycho Brahe. When the Rama was on his deathbed, he said, I just heard from my student Rav David Gans, in the name of, I believe, Tycho Brahe, that a new star has been discovered, and it's called Nova. I think Nova just means a new star. And the Rama says that he hopes that that's a portend that Hashem always brings new tzaddikim to the world before the old tzaddikim pass away. The Rama says, I just got word that the great Arizal passed away. The Arizal had just passed away. The Rama was on his deathbed. The Rama saw that Sephardic Jewry was decimated in 1492. And the Rama said, just like when the Spanish community had a decline, Hashem brought up the community of Jews in Poland, because Hashem always brings new tzaddikim to the world before the old guard passes on. I'm hoping, says Rama, the fact that Tycho Brahe found a new star, that's symbolic of the fact that as I'm leaving the world, and as the Arizal just left the world, Hashem is bringing new tzaddikim to the world to continue on the tradition of the Torah. So the Rama was a very interesting personality, aside from the fact that he's the backbone of halacha for minhag Ashkenaz.
The motivation for writing, going back to the question, the motivation for them to write codified law, where did that come? Why did it happen? It must have been something in the that needed it, right?
Yeah, the people needed it. In other words, they needed unanimous law. So what Rab Chai, look, you have the same debate with the Art Scroll. When the Art Scroll Gemara came out, Rab Shach said that people are going to be learning, now people are going to be learning in bed. It's going to promote atzlas. People are going to be lying back and, with their feet up, sipping lemonade, learning Gemara. It's going to promote laziness. And Rav Elyashiv said, halavai, they should be learning the Gemara and, better than the other things they'd be doing. So, look, every time we have things that make learning easier, you always have debate. In fact, the Trumas Hadeshin writes that they had a new invention in the times of Rishonim, a revolving chair. Very big technology that they invented, a revolving chair. And this way, you could you have a sefer here, a sefer here, a sefer there. You could just, flip, like futuristic, a revolving chair. Who knows what's next? Maybe a pen, And the sefer Leket Yoshar from the Trumas Hadeshen, he says that it's promoting laziness. It used to be if you needed a sefer, you would get up and you would go take it, and that's also amilas, which is a very big limud. That means when you're learning something and you want to look something up and you say, should I go to the shelf? Going to the shelf to look something up is amilas b'Torah. Any small. So look, I think the general viewpoint is, even with all the crutches we have, even with the art scroll and all the other crutches, but in our generation, there's still room for amelos. If you apply yourself, there's still room for amelos with all the revolving chairs and all the art scroll gemaras. Okay, Rabbi say the Rama's yard side is like BaOmer, Zechusa Yagin Alinu.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.